I'm going to sit down. I'm retired and I can do it. I remember when I was a kid coming up here and wishing that I lived here all the time because it was so nice. Until I heard the story how they treated Steve and Mike, I'm glad I lived in South Carolina. I didn't want to get my head hit on the door or be peed on. Okay. My genealogy is a little bit different. You've got a little flair, a little memory, and I've had to rely on other people's work and what I could find. I don't have all the colorful stories, Eliza, and whatever else you said, but this is what I found, and I think it's a little more accurate than your weather on TV, what they predict. They're about 50% right the time and 50% wrong the time, so it's one way or the other. It's not an exact science. And my name's Dave Sexton. My father was Carol Sexton, who was the son of James Sexton, who was the son of Stanford Sexton. So that gives you an idea of where I am. And that's Jimmy is my uncle and Betty is my aunt. Okay? And so we're on that side of the family. Okay? We don't always claim that, but I figure y'all are family. Y'all probably know it anyway. Okay. I'm going to start with Catherine, which is the Princess Maiden. I have a little bit different story, that she was actually the daughter, whether she was adopted or she was the natural daughter of, I don't know because I don't have a birth certificate. I know she lived in the household of Lorenzo Sexton. She was the 9th of 10 children. And she was born in 1848. There was no radio and there was no television. So they had 10 children. Gives a new word for prolific. This occurs throughout the genealogy I went through. There were some guys, and I'm only doing the direct line. I'm not going into all the brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles, so we can have a direct line. They would marry a woman and they would have 7 or 8 kids and she would die, and they would marry a younger woman and have 7 or 8 more kids. And their excuse was, well, it's a farm. Not all of them were farmers. Okay. Lorenzo was originally from Tennessee, and he fought in the Civil War. And he came to South Carolina, I think, to marry Anna Cantrell, who was from Hendersonville. And she has a long line of the Cantrell family. She's buried in the Cantrell Cemetery. Lorenzo fought for the South in the Civil War, and like a bunch of us Sextons, he shot his mouth off. Somebody shot his mouth off in the war. Somebody else did it. As far as Catherine actually being married, I'm not sure that she was or not, but it reminds me of a story that my dad told me. He was from Hendersonville, and he went to East Flat Rock High School, and he worked at the movie theater. And he would walk home after his work every day up the mountain to where they lived. And he met this nice, beautiful young Jewish girl, and they started dating. And my grandmother became concerned and said, Carol, I'm really concerned about you marrying this Jewish girl. What are those children going to be if you get married? And my dad said, why, Sextons, of course. So whether Catherine got married or not, it doesn't matter to me. I'm a Sexton. And we're all family, and this is the way it is. Okay? I'm not going to change. I'm not ashamed of what she did. If she didn't do what she did, none of us would be here. And we're not the ones to judge her or forgive her. That's up to the Lord above. Let's just be happy with what we got and who we are. And I'm proud to be a Sexton.
Praise.
Okay. Now, like I said, Lorenzo came from Tennessee. His father was John Sexton, who fought in the Revolutionary War.
That's Sarah's daddy.
Okay.
Son Ave Maria for him.
Okay, John Sexton married Mary Ann Gilbert, and they have a long line that go back to. Again, I'm not going into all that. But he fought in a bunch of wars. He not only fought in the regular army. When he was released after 3 years, he joined the militia and fought. He applied for a pension and got some land in Virginia. His widow also got land. I've got a pension later on. So we go back a long way. Now his father is a little bit fuzzy, but it ends up on the same line. Okay? Some believe his father was John Sr., who was born in 1722. Some believes it was Joseph who was born in 1730. They both have the same grandfather. Again, it doesn't really matter. I think the connection is there. Again, there's no birth certificates to match all this up. A lot of people were born at home. You don't know. You have to go best guess. I don't have the Gutenberg Bible that has our whole family history in it. But we go back that far. Okay? The father of Joseph Sexton was Charles Sexton. He was born in 1680. He married Sarah Jameson. His father was George Sexton, born in 1650, who married a Hannah Spencer. He was a sea captain, which is pretty good. They all weren't farmers. And let me tell you, they weren't dummies either. They made their ends meet. They did all kinds of stuff. Some of them were tanners, some of the uncles, and they did all kinds of things. His father, George Sexton, was born in Ireland, and he's the one that came over. He was born in 1632. He was also a sea captain. Now, yes,
I
baby.
read too, the name of the ship he come on was
The
called
Blessing.
The Blessing.
Yes, okay.
Okay.
George Sexton, as I said, was a sea captain. He did not die in Virginia, is where they were. He died at sea, which happened a lot when it was a dangerous profession being a sea captain, okay? Back then, compasses weren't reliable, and certainly the weather wasn't reliable, and there were no weather forecasters, okay? He died in the West Indies, which means he was part of that trade route. I don't know what he carried, but a lot of times it was sugar cane and rum and people, okay? And we won't go into that. I will say all the research I've done, I never found anybody that claimed they owned a slave on a direct line. Doesn't say they didn't, but I never saw where they showed it on their census, because they listed that. Couldn't find where anybody owned a slave. All right, George Sexton changed his name from Sexten to Sexton when he came to America. So we're probably related to a lot of the Sextons that are out there. Okay? His father was James Sexton, which is kind of bizarre. That's my grandfather's name. I'm sure he wasn't named after him because they probably didn't know. And his wife was Joan Ellis. He was born in 1614 in Ireland. His father was Stephen Sexton, who was born in 1584 in Ireland. His wife was Alison White, born 1588. Now, the one that Betty touched on a little bit, Edmund Sexton, he was High Sheriff of Limerick, Ireland. And those were jobs they were appointed for a year. Okay? His wife was Catherine Arthur. This is 1564. Something else about Edmund Sexton. They were actually Catholics back then, because Ireland was Catholic back then. But he was also a server to King Henry VIII. Sort of what she said, very close to what she said. King Henry VIII, that was his favorite server, even though he was Catholic, which is kind of bizarre, because he started the Church of England because he wanted to divorce his wife. But I guess he fell under the Sexton charm. Because we always laugh and have fun, whatever happens. Every one of y'all have this in you. It's passed down from generation to generation. The worst thing in the world can happen and we'll find something to laugh about. You know, like when my granddad was in the hospital dying of a heart attack, the nurses came out and were laughing, and they thought he was crying. They said, no, he was telling jokes in there while he was dying. We found the best of the situation. Anyway, King Henry VIII thought so much of him, and Ireland was under the English rule at that time. He gave him a castle in Limerick, Ireland. And they were the third richest family in Ireland. And I found out, just because you have a relative who owned a castle does not make you a princess. Okay? You're close. No, you lost your royalty when you let him run into the wall, okay? All right, Edmund, his father was Morris Sexton. From 1544 is when he was born in Christian Nagle. The next two generations are both Dennis Sextons. A Dennis Jr. born 1524 and a Dennis Sr. who was born about 1500. Now the dates may not be exact, But someone I really relied on was a guy who actually connects to our family. His name was Dennis Sexton. He went to Ireland and found out all these things about our Sexton line.
Is he the one that put it in there?
He's the one that put it on the research that I grabbed a hold of. He went and saw all the archives and the records. He actually saw the plaques of all the sheriffs of Limerick. And we had 3 sheriffs of Limerick. Okay? Some of those were the brothers. Now, to go back with the thing with all the money and the castle. In Europe at that time, when someone passed away, the eldest son got the entire inheritance. Unfortunately for us, I think we were probably the 5th or 6th son along the way, because we got squat. Okay? Now, I know to go to Ireland, and I think 2 or 3 brothers come from Ireland to here, it took a lot of money to come here, even though George was a sea captain, and he may have got a discount, and that might have eaten up a little bit of the money that was spent. But there's one thing you can't buy with the money, and that's our spirit. Okay? We actually go back further than that. I don't have the exact records because there are none, but what he found out was our name was changed from Osation, which is an Irish word which means like bodyguard or protector. And they say from the 10 to 1200s is where we originated in Ireland. But they don't have any records, but that's what he found out over there. If you go to church, we actually all come from Noah, if you go back far enough, or Adam. But it doesn't really... Y'all didn't believe that we came from Noah? Remember, they were on the ship by themselves. There were no outsiders, but that's another story. Okay, but you should be proud of your lineage. It doesn't really matter where you've come from. It's where you are. And our family has passed on a lot of things that had nothing to do with money. And that's the spirit that we have. I've got a lot more information about all the other brothers if somebody wants to make copies or whatever. My email address, if you want this, I'll be glad to send you all that I have. I've been doing this for probably 10 years. And I've actually gone down the wrong path a number of times that were the wrong Sexton line. I'm talking about in genealogy. And my dad and I went to Virginia one time investigating the family. Stayed there 2.5 days, and it was the wrong family. But we had fun, and that's what mattered. You know, I don't know if y'all have ever been to parts of Virginia, but the interstates run between the mountains in a lot of places. And we were on one side of the mountain, and a snowstorm was coming. And I looked at the map, and I said, Dad, it's only 3 miles over there to the interstate. Let's just go over the mountain. And we got up there, and it was a 1-lane road. It was snowing so bad, and I kept seeing something every time we'd come around a corner. And it's getting closer, Dad. Just keep going. He was going, God, I hope we don't run into somebody. Because the road was almost wide enough for the car. And so we finally came around this one corner, and it was a sign that said, "Fine for littering." Back on that road in the middle of nowhere. But anyway, we made it. But it was fun. And the family's the most important thing you'll ever have. Whether it's your married family, your real family, or your adopted family. And one thing about all us Sextons, we may not see each other for 20 or 30 years, some of us, but we still love each other. Amen. And I love y'all. Thank you. Amen.